Good morning. So, I just was almost at a YouTuber's block, I guess you would say, this morning. Um, but then I got to thinking about something, and it I got to thinking about, because I've been working on costume and all this sort of stuff, and there's been stuff going on within the denomination that I was talking about yesterday. They're in convention and all, but I think what I landed on was there are a lot of ideas floating around nowadays that, right at first, they just look calm, collected, innocent. Um, and I think we have a lot of ideas nowadays that are kind of cosplaying sheep. Um, when you go to a convention and a really well done cosplay, you can't necessarily tell who it is that is portraying someone else. And I mean, a lot of these people are not even like professionals in the sense that they do it for a life career, going from convention to convention. And so, the skills to be able to portray something else. Scripture talks about that. Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, chapter 7 of Matthew, verse 15 says, beware of false prophets that come to you as sheep, but inside they're ravenous wolves. In other words, they're going to destroy the flock, the herd, the group, because Jesus is referred to as the good shepherd, and we are the sheep. As Psalm 23 would say, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. So when you think about that, though, then, well, our thoughts would turn to, oh, well, if there's this horrible thing amongst us, then we should just take it out, get rid of it, wipe it out. And in reality, the scripture says that our fight, our struggle, is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and other manipulative forces within this world that are, they use the same tactic. In fact, Scripture says of Satan that he masquerades as an angel of light. He looks like something that's good and helpful, and ultimately leads to a path that's further from God and further from what He would have for us. And so, I'll give an example from my own life and experience. About a little over a decade ago, I was getting back involved in teaching, and all the buzz was this anger over Common Core math being instituted. Now, I understand what the premises are, what they were attempting to do with this curriculum. One, to make it easier to shift from state to state without there being big gaps in people's learning. There was also a focus on higher order thinking skills and those sorts of things. As a math teacher, one of the things that I noticed was people that are good in math generally kind of play games with numbers in their heads. They run the numbers whenever they're looking at stuff or seeing data or information out there. And so I think in some ways, with the higher order thinking skills, with the other, there was an attempt to try to help the more average student within that area to do what the gifted math person does kind of naturally, to get them to think mathematically in ways that do that. Now, on the surface, that sounds great. Sounds like, hey, good thing. Now, in practical experience of my children being brought up over the last, give or take, decade in that system, what have I noticed about my children's learning? Because of the pressure for teachers to be evaluated on the basis of how much higher order thinking, rudimentary skills got kind of thrown out the window. I mean, I know there will be some that will argue, well, those skills are in there still, but they're not the focus of a lot of teaching, because we've got to get to this stuff. We've got to get to this point as a thinker as far as mathematically. And so because of that, they really did not, and the opinion was, well, they'll always have a calculator anyway. Okay. But then if they don't know how to apply or use that calculator, it's kind of null. Another aspect would be that, if in teaching higher order thinking skills and sort of mental games that you do mathematically to think about numbers and think about things mathematically, you lock into a method that kind of works for you. But I saw so many times in their assignments and their tests and things of that nature, they were required to do it another way, even though they had come to an understanding of how to do it one way. Forcing them to do it another way after they've already grasped the concept in at least one method seemed to me to kind of be wasting some of that time that could have been used on skills and things of that nature. So what I'm saying is, what started out as seemed like a innocent, nice, useful enough, helpful, docile sort of idea, down the road, it's actually had a devourous effect on those to which it was applied. I won't dare speak about the English side. My wife is more experienced in that. She's been an English teacher for a long time, and she's seen both sides before that and after that. I will say from experience, one thing I can see is the kind of rudimentary skills that seem to be diminishing in current educational practice within the language arts would be, one, the lack of ability to read things that are in script, and the lack of the ability to be able to perform script writing at all, cursive, if you will. And then the other is the diminished ability to spell. I know spelling's just one of those rudimentary things, but without being able to spell, and as much as nowadays it doesn't even seem that in a lot of literary understanding and criticism, it doesn't matter what the author's intent, it's whatever the reader got out of it is the perceived intent. Then if you can't even spell the proper word to communicate what you're wanting to communicate, you have really kind of let it wide open to them to say that you said whatever they wanted to say that they thought you said. And so it leads to a breakdown of communication. That, combined with the fact that there's so much discussion on the evolution of language and the change of what words mean and how this is developed. But once again, going back to an earlier video, the one that defines the terms generally wins the argument. And so I just see a lot of these ideas, they come docile enough and say, oh, this is not bad. In fact, you're a bad person for thinking this is bad. And then once it's accepted and in, a decade, 2 decades down the line, we see that it was really a predator